Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Agorist Project. My name is Steven, and we're going to be going over today the fifth article and installment of the Agorist Project, titled An Agorist's Creed, where we'll be going over from beginning to end a basic overview of everything we believe the gospel is. You can find this article online at agoristproject.wordpress.com, or you can find it on facebook.com/agoristproject. Throughout this article, there will be Bible verses, scripture references throughout the article so that you can go ahead and cross-check these things yourselves. So from the very beginning, God's intention has always been for man to govern the earth and all things in it. But never was it his intention for men to govern other men, for that was the privilege of God alone. Man, who had been given this authority by God himself, had been seduced with the temptation of the one and only thing he did not already have authority over, which he reasoned would make him equal to God, authority over himself. By eating the fruit that had been forbidden him, man declared himself authority over himself, and what was intended to bring him liberty he would find only brought him captivity. For when man took for himself authority over man, the sinful nature was awakened in all men to follow, with the desire to put himself above other men, and with it the power of the state, that is, archism. This sin nature, archism, would ingrain itself into the very foundations of the systems of men and become the way of the world. But God, who established a plan from the beginning in order to redeem man from this sin nature, the archist way of the world of ruling over one another, decided to set apart for himself a people who would resist the systems of men and return to the authority of God alone. This people, for centuries, would be surrounded by various state powers who would wage war against them, as is the parasitic nature of the state, to conquer them, to lead them into captivity, and thrive off the labors of those they have conquered. And time and again, God would deliver them from the hands of these archists, that they may experience the liberty he promised them. This is his agora. This people, however, also rejected God when they demanded the rule of an earthly king like the world around them, thus handing themselves over to their sin nature and abandoning God as their king. Yet God remained faithful in that the authority they withheld from him and gave to themselves in the form of a human king, he would return to himself once and for all by making himself man and intercepting that authority through the royal bloodline of David. This is Jesus. From the moment of his birth, Jesus became a threat to the state powers which ruled much of the known world. It was this threat alone that forced the hand of the state to warrant for his execution, from which he fled into exile as an outlaw. Circa 30 years later, the now infamous outlaw reemerged with a message that would soon challenge the authority of men and the empires they've built, turning the world upside down. By this gospel, he would liberate humanity from the enslavement of the legislative system and from those who give the law its power by establishing a new system on the earth, heaven. This new system is one which is entirely incompatible with that of the system of men, where murder isn't murder under the guise of war, theft isn't theft under the guise of taxation, condemnation isn't condemnation under the guise of the courts, and slavery isn't even considered slavery when the participation remains involuntary under the guise of the state. And so the greatest revolution the earth had ever seen had begun. Over the next 3 years, Jesus would appeal this message, the case for a stateless society, to the misfits of society and all those trampled underfoot by the systems of men. He would continue to revolutionize the way we think about the everyday world around us by challenging the ideologies of the men who built it. A new way of thinking, which would result in a series of civil disobedience acts in a state with zero tolerance for disobedience, inevitably led to his arrest, trial, conviction, and sentence to death as a criminal on a cross. But it was through his resurrection that he proved the powers of the state powerless and the authority of men as a mere farce, for he overcame them all. This is the gospel, and this is the Agorist Project. Thank you for joining us.